Hi guys, welcome once again to our YouTube channel. I am Michelle, and if it is for the first time you're coming across my video, please don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to also leave your thoughts and opinions on the comment section below. Because today we are going to speak about an interesting story, a story that I have been watching for the longest time, a story that I have been uh, wanting to do for the longest time, and it is a very interesting topic because we are going to talk about the true origin of Jamaica, how Jamaica really came to be Jamaica, and how it was named Jamaica. And I find this story interesting because I do talk about Jamaica a lot, but after I've thought about it, I wanted to know more about Jamaica. I wanted to know how it really came from, how it was built, because Jamaica is an island that has the smallest number of people, but it is growing so fast. So that is one of the things that made me want to know sorry, want me to know the true origin of these people. I wanted to know where they were coming from, how were found in Jamaica, and how they landed in Jamaica. So guys, let's dive in to the story, because this is a very interesting topic today, and I'm curious and eager to tell you about uh, where they really came from. So guys, Jamaican origin goes back thousands of years, long before Europeans arrived. And this is to tell us the first people to start Jamaica were indigenous roots. And the first known inhabitants of Jamaica were the Taino people, an Arawakan speaking group who migrated from South America around 600 to 650 centuries. They called the island Jamaica, or Yamai, meaning land of food and water, or land of springs. And we all know Jamaica is a small island that is surrounded by the Caribbean Sea. I think that is the main reason why these people decided to call it Jamaica or Yamai, because and the Taino established villages, cultivated cassava, maize, and yams, and fished extensively. They lived in communal structures and had a rich spiritual culture. And these Taino people, the food they invented many years ago, if you get very well, the Jamaican people still value these foods like cassava and yams. These foods are their national foods. These people tells us that they value where they come from and they value the culture. After the indigenous roots arrival, the next group was European arrival, who arrived in 1494 with Christopher Columbus landed on the island during his second voyage. Spain claimed Jamaica enslaved many Taino and introduced diseases that devastated the native population. Within a century, most Taino were wiped out. A lot of Taino people died because of the disease that was invented. Disease that was invented by the Spain, who claimed that the Jamaican people were treating Taino people as slaves, and so they invented a disease which killed a lot of Taino. And in 1494 and 1650 to 1655, the Spanish rule was introduced. Jamaica became a small Spanish colony, mainly a supply base rather than a major settlement. The Spanish brought in enslaved Africans to replace the dying Taino as laborers. And we all know slavery started many years ago. It is something that uh, it is something that started many years ago during the colonial rule, and it is something that we are still talking about at this point, because it is something that our ancestors, our fathers went through them. And in 1655, British conquered. The English seized Jamaica from Spain in 1655. They developed it into a plantation economy based on sugarcane, fueled by the mass importation of enslaved Africans. These people are normal. They made it in a large amount. They made slavery in a large amount because when the British conquered, the slavery increased. Over time, Jamaica became one of the Britain's wealthiest colonies, but also one of the most brutal slave society. Slaves were mistreated. Many black people were treated as slaves. In fact, all black people who lived in Jamaica at that point were slaves. And enslaved Africans resisted slavery, who established free communities in the mountains. They found somewhere to run to, so they decided to run at that point. Today's Jamaican culture, language, patois, music, and traditions are deeply rooted in the African heritage. Jamaican patois language was deeply rooted in African heritage because the Maroons are the people who came from Africa, who are the same people who ran through revolts and Maroons. After the long struggle, Jamaica gained independence from Britain on August 6, 1962. So, the true origin of Jamaica is indigenous Taino, reshaped by African resilience under colonial oppression, with European colonization drastically altering its trajectory. Let's dig into the African influence, because that's really the heartbeat of modern Jamaica. African roots in Jamaica. The African roots in Jamaica was through enslavement and arrival. Between the 15,000 centuries to 18,000, over 6,000 Africans was forcibly brought to Jamaica through the transatlantic slave trade. They came mainly from West and Central Africa. And they came from Ghana, a place called Akan, Nigeria in Igbo, Yoruba in Nigeria, Congo in Congo and Angola, Mandika Wolof, and others. And resistance was at that time. Many Africans escaped plantations and formed Maroons, independent mountain communities. The Maroons were the independent mountain communities. They preserved African languages, music, farming, and warfare strategies. Maroons fought two major wars against the British in 1728 to 1740 and 1795 to 1796, forcing the British to sign treaties. Rare victories for enslaved people anywhere. These people were tired of slave trade. These people were tired of being treated as slaves. And the Jamaican patois or patois language is built on English words, but its grammar and rhythm come heavily from African languages, Akan, Igbo, Yoruba, and Congo. Example of the African influence on words like Dampi, ghost, from tree, adubo, nyam, to eat, from Akan and Wolof, obey, spiritual practice, from Igbo and Akan. The religion and spiritualities. Africans brought beliefs that merged with Christianity, creating Obeah, Kumina, and later revival traditions. These practices carried African concept of ancestors, drumming, healing, and spirit possession. Rastafari, emerging in the 1930s, also draws on African identity, Ethiopia, and resistance to oppression. The music and the rhythm. African drumming traditions became the backbone of Jamaican music. Mento, folk music with African instruments. Nyabingi, drumming. Rastafari ritual from East African rhythm. Ska, rocksteady, reggae, and dancehall all carry African call and response, offbeat rhythms, and chanting styles. Reggae through Bob Marley and others globalized African-based rhythms and liberation messages. And Bob Marley's songs are always talking about the Jamaican experience during the colonial period and how they came to independence. His songs are always teaching us on the Jamaican experience, where they really came from. And Jamaican food, many staple Jamaican dishes are African in origin. Ackee and saltfish, which is which came from Ghana. Yam, plantain, breadfruit, kalalu, jack cooking, rooted in maroon African seasoning and smoking techniques. Their identity and their resistance. The African spirit of resistance shaped Jamaican culture. Rebellions like Turkey's War in 1760, Akan led, and Sam Shape's rebellion in 1831 helped push toward emancipation. Even today, Jamaican identity is deeply tied to African pride, Pan-Africanism, and resistance to colonial oppression. While European imposed slavery and colonialism, it was the African people who gave Jamaica its soul in language, food, music, spirituality, and the spirit of freedom. And Africa has contributed a lot in the ethnic groups have contributed a lot. Breaking it down by specific African ethnic groups really shows how Jamaican's culture is a living memory of Africa. Africa ethnic groups to Jamaica were Akan, who came from Ghana, Ivory Coast area. Their language was Akan. Three words live in Jamaica Patois. Ethnic groups to Jamaica were Akan, who came from Ghana to Ivory Coast area. And many Akan or Twi words like live in Jamaican Patois. Nyam, eat. Dampi, ghost from Adubo. Obe, spiritual power or practice. Akan enslaved people led Turkey's war in 1760, one of the largest slave uprisings in Jamaican history. Kwame Kojo Kwamini survived in maroon communities, and the Igbo were the second, coming from Nigeria. Igbo cosmology shaped Obeah and aspects of revivalist religion. The Igbo landing legend in the US, choosing death over enslavement, also resonates in Jamaica, showing a spirit of resistance. Words like unu, you all, which means you all, in Jamaican Patois language, reflect Igbo plural forms. And the third ethnic group was Yoruba, Nigeria, who came from Nigeria in Benin. Yoruba Orisha worship influenced Kumina and Pokomania, which makes drumming, dancing, and spirit possession with Christian elements. Drums and polyrhythms gave rise to Nyabigi drumming, later foundational to reggae and Rastafari chants. Some Yoruba names were Yemoja, Shango, appear in Maroon traditions and rituals. Another group was Congo from Angola, Central Africa. Strong influence of Obeah and Maroon rituals, belief about ancestors and the afterlife shaped Jamaican concept of spirit. Many Kikongo words remain in patois. For example, Kumina from Congo linked to religious dances. Call and response singing, drumming and dance traditions come heavily from the Congo. Another group is Mandinga, Wolof and other West Africans. Their staples foods were like rice cultivation techniques, plantain, yam, and okra. Cooking came from this group. Wolof contributed words like nyam, eat, also seen in Akan. Many enslaved Muslims from Senegambia kept aspects of Muslim fasting, dress, and naming. Their cultural fusion. What makes Jamaica unique is not one group, but the mixing of all these African traditions, which blended under slavery and Maroon resistance to create something new. The Maroon treaties preserved Akan and Congo traditions strongly. Plantation, African mixed Yoruba and Igbo influence into music, healing, and language. Out of the fusion came reggae, jackfood, Jamaican patois, and Rastafari, all carrying African at the core. When we started the video, we started by saying Jamaica first name was Jamaica, and the meaning of Jamaica was land of food and water, or land of springs. This reflected the island's forests, lush forests, rivers, and natural springs. When the Spanish arrived in 1494 with Columbus, they adapted Jamaica into Jamaica, pronounced differently in Spanish at the time. Later, when the English took over in 1655, they kept the Spanish version, but with the English pronunciation we use today, Jamaica. So the name is indigenous in origin, preserved through Spanish and English colonizers. Other Taino names also survive in the Caribbean, like Haiti, which they name it Haiti, land of mountains, and Cuba, which they used to call it Cubao, which was a fertile land, which means fertile land. So when we talk about the true origin of Jamaica, it's a story of layers. The Taino people, first name, the island Jamaica, land of food and water. Then came colonization with Spain and later Britain, which tried to erase its roots, but the heart of Jamaica comes from Africa. The Akan, Igbo, Yoruba, Congo, and many others carried their language, their music, their food, their spirituality, and above all, their spirit of resistance across the Atlantic. Out of pain and survival, they created something new, a culture that the whole world now celebrates through reggae, Rastafari, Jamaican patois, and a fearless identity. Jamaica is more than an island, it's a living testament of African resilience, freedom, and creativity. That is the true origin of Jamaica. From Jamaica, the land of food and water, to the heartbeat of reggae and Rastafari, Jamaica's true origin lies in Africa. It's African in the Caribbean. Respect the love to the roots. And if you want more stories of history and culture, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.